What's up everybody, Goji here. I am going to be working today on an expanded, new, and improved portal room for the 1.19 Wild update. So if you haven't seen the experimental snapshots today, this is going to be inspired by the portal room in the ancient city. So I don't know yet, nobody knows yet, where this portal goes to or what the function is, but all we know is kind of what it looks like and the vibe that is designed right now in the experimental snapshot. So I kind of want to take that as inspiration, and I want to take that as a kind of a baseline to expand it and build on it and create something that you might see in a survival world if you customize the portal room. So that's what we're going to be working on. We're going to be doing it all in creative, and this is also going to be kind of a WorldEdit tutorial somewhat, just explaining kind of how I'm creating shapes and how I'm going through the design process. So let's just jump right in. I think what I want to start with here is giving myself a reference block to stand on, which we'll say is white wool. Awesome. And then we're going to come up with some cylinders here. So let's make them red wool. I want to come out width, radius 30 and height 10. And we're going to do the same thing with radius 35 and height 10. So we can create this kind of concentric circles. So this is where I want my path to be that's going to surround the whole thing, and we'll design more on this later. Now, if you're wondering why I'm using red wool, well, this isn't going to be what the final design looks like. These are just filler blocks. I use wool because they're very brightly colored, so you can tell the different components of the build apart and really just focus on shape and come up with a shape that's really convincing and really cool. And then later we can replace these red wool blocks with WorldEdit, or using WorldEdit, and we can replace them with anything we want. Stone, deep slate, you get the idea. Okay, so I have one section here blocked off, and I'm going to show you a technique that I'm going to be using a lot for this build to create perfect symmetry. So what I want to do is I want to copy a segment, or basically copy the whole orange part. And what we're going to do is copy it, there we go, and rotate it 90 degrees, and then paste. We're going to do that 2 more times. And this is going to create a perfect copy of that orange segment across the entire structure. So this is going to be perfect symmetry. Now what I want to do is install some cascading staircases from this level up here all the way down to this level down here, or maybe a little bit lower. I used the same kind of rotational symmetry trick as I used before to fill in some stairs. So as you can see here, the design looks like a lot, but really it's not that complicated. I just kind of started with a central piece here, came down 3 blocks, kept keeping it nice and wide, and then I did the same thing here in the corner, come out 3 blocks, then I just repeated that same design all the way down to the bottom. So there's a total of like 4 layers. Okay, just fixed a couple of details. I put some wool to kind of add some walls behind the stairs so that I can design those later. And I also just added a simple floor here. So we're going to come back, we're going to figure out what to put in the middle. Okay, so I put in the portal outline in the base. Now, I am lying a little bit in this video because the true portal is actually 22 blocks in width. This one is 23 blocks in width, if my math is correct. And the only reason for changing that is because building in evens is stupid and I hate doing it. So I'm ignoring Mojang for this video, and technically it wouldn't be that hard to fix it. You would just kind of have to create a slightly different design with the circle. I don't know if WorldEdit will give you circles in evens. I know there's ways to do it, and people have kind of have some pictures online about how to build even radius circles. But for this video, we're just going to ignore that. We're going to do 23 in width. I want to turn my attention now over to I'm calling it the catwalk. I don't really know what else to call it, but it's just kind of a little path. In the original experimental snapshots, this is actually a square path that's kind of covered and has a wool floor that surrounds it. And so here I'm using a circular design because I think that's just going to look better, but I do want to use that kind of same concept and expand on it. So I think I'll start by filling this in, and then we'll build it up from there. I came in and I added some green wool down here just to create some blocks for the base that you can walk on. And then I also added these kind of archways with I'm thinking this is going to be kind of like the entrance right here. And the arches are going to go all the way around. So I'm going to use, again, the same radial symmetry trick that I used at the beginning to copy these around the entire perimeter. So I've added in the entirety of the kind of arched pathway. I think this looks really solid. I'm happy with where this is so far. Okay, I think I'm going to jump in with the color. The first thing that I want to do is come in and basically get a copy of this entire thing. But I think I kind of want it to be, roughly speaking, lighter at the top and then darker down below. So with that in mind, let me see if we can settle on a palette here. So obviously we're going to be using mostly deep slate here. We'll have the cobbled. I don't think we'll use much of the OG deep slate, but we'll keep that on hand. Deep slate bricks. So this will kind of, I think, be the most of the palette itself. It's going to revolve a lot around this, but I don't see any reason to ignore blackstone. That's looking really solid. I wonder what else we could add. I think gray wool will be a nice texture for us to consider. Let's see if we can figure out where it kind of fits in. Maybe even between the tiles and the deep slate. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So what else could we add? We need some contrast, and I want to think really hard about that. So what kind of colors could we use? Copper is maybe a good option. So we could think about having this to kind of bring some contrast to the design. I don't hate this. Maybe we could also use other variants of copper, like the weathered copper. Yeah, and I think, like, I also kind of think about this in the context of, like, plot. Like, this is supposed to be an ancient, abandoned, deep underground city. Maybe there's some technological components to that story where that you know, civilization was using copper to create various things. That kind of works. So this would be a good contrasting element. I don't immediately know what I'll be using it on. Yeah, and I think also having soul flames. So like soul campfire, for example, or soul lanterns. We got to start somewhere. So let me start by maybe replacing the green wool with just a plain old blend of deep slate and tough. This is pretty good. I wonder if I would like this better if these were kind of randomized. That can be something that I do manually a little bit later on. Okay, so we're going to focus on the red a little bit later. Let's focus on the orange now. So this is going to be kind of the transitional texture. So I want it to be a little bit darker than that one as we get down into the deep dark, as it's called. I think this looks pretty cool. I'm going to have to come in and do a little bit of detail work, a little bit of, you know, maybe some patches of the tuff can kind of creep in along the sides just to make it look a little bit more smooth. So maybe we could kind of have something like this. Periodically, I can do that manually. The next thing I want to change is the yellow block. So these are going to be kind of the stair blocks. And I think I want to use polished deep slate for that. I think this looks really, really good. I'm actually happy with that. So what I want to do is I want to come in and add in some slabs. I forgot basalt exists. The only components, except for the portal, that I have left to color are the red kind of exterior and then the green walls. So to do this, I'm actually going to use the same palette for both of them, and I'm going to use a more advanced technique that I like to call swatching. The first step in this process is to come up with a block gradient, and I want the block gradient to skew on the darker side. This is essentially all that I need for the first stage of this process. I just need to fix a block gradient. Before we jump to the next phase, what I want to do is I need to figure out the total vertical height all the way to the top of what we want to texture, which is the top of these little kind of arches. So I'm just, to figure out how tall this is, I'm just going to cheat. We're going to copy that, and it's going to tell us it's 18 blocks. So since my gradient is a 6-block gradient, what that means is that I need to have about 3 blocks for each one. We're going to come in, and we're going to stack this 2 up. And we're going to repeat this for the rest of the 6 blocks. Now what we're going to do is we're going to basically internally blend all of these blocks together. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to take, let's say maybe this 2 blocks up and then come 2 blocks down, and we'll blend this all together. So we'll set 50% blackstone, 50% polished blackstone bricks. Like this. This is what it looks like after I worked on smoothing it out a little bit. It still has a little bit of a border here, as you can see, between the deep slate and the basalt, but it's not too bad. I think it'll definitely not look as bad once it's on the inside. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in here, and we're going to copy this, and then I'm going to come over here. So we'll replace red wool with the clipboard. And as you can see, it's not perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to undo, and we're going to say at, we're going to say at, and we'll just put in any number here. So we'll undo it, and we're going to increase the Y value, say to 2. So that had the, almost the right effect. Let's just make sure. Let's put a 1 there. Yeah, so that was 2 is the perfect number. As you can see from the outside, this has that kind of really perfect gradient effect. And the reason we made such a big swatch is because if you had just done this with, let's say, 1 block, so you just kind of came in here and you just used this 1 by 1 block like that, then you're going to see a lot of repetition because you're going to have that same design repeated over the whole thing. So by creating a 9 by 9 wide swatch, it allows you to have a huge variation and a kind of a lot of randomness to this. As you can see, there's still a little bit of that kind of sharper border between those 2 colors, but I'm not bothered by that. I think that's okay, especially given how much effort it takes to replace it. Okay, so I replaced the lime wool with that same block gradient that we used a second ago, and I think this is looking really solid. I'm definitely getting to the point of this design process where I need to see some contrast, because this is a lot of dark blocks. But overall, the palette is really, I mean, I think it's really hitting on what we're going for, which is the ancient city. And if you look at the ancient city in the experimental snapshots, this is a lot of what it looks like. So I think we're hitting the right notes, but it does need contrast. It needs contrast, but that's okay because that's all going to be in the details. And the detail work we're going to put off for a little bit longer because I still need to figure out what colors I'm going to do down there. Okay, so I worked on the floor design for a while, and this is what I came up with. It's a 3 by 3 repeating tiles. So each tile is 3 by 3, and it has this kind of inside kind of checkerboard with the polished blackstone and the chiseled deep slate, and then also just a netherite block. So I didn't say that this was a very survival friendly design, but it definitely looked pretty cool. I've been working on the portal for just a few minutes here, and I've added a lot of walls. So I've got the blackstone walls down here, and I've got the deep slate tile walls at the top. I think it's looking pretty solid. What I'm going to do is move this entire build using WorldEdit into an actual 1.18.2 cave. And that's where I'm going to be working on the details and a lot of kind of all of the, you know, really fine grain approach to this whole project. I'm going to be doing that. I've worked on the terraforming for a little bit here, and I think it looks pretty good. I think it's basically at a stopping place. I've got kind of all of the edges nice and fixed with a bit of a gravel problem here. I think it looks pretty good. There's, you know, it's not 100% perfect, but I didn't spend too much time doing it by hand. I really just wanted it to kind of fix it up so that it doesn't look as bad. I think this definitely feels like it fits in an ancient city. I don't think it really stands out or looks terribly man-made. I think it looks pretty good. Now we're going to start working on the details on the inside. Okay, so I created a railing here. I don't really know what else to call it, but I think a railing is a good word. Consisting of stairs, blackstone walls, and chains, as well as these soul lanterns. So I think it looks pretty good. The next thing I want to do is work on texturing a little bit. In particular, this area over here in between the main chamber and then the catwalk around it. I came through here and I added in some of these cobbled deep slate walls all around the edges. And I also came across the top and I made these into sort of true arches as opposed to the kind of flatter arch design that I was using earlier. I also added in some soul campfires here right around all of the entrances, just to kind of add in a little bit of ambiance. Now, I think the next phase of what I want to do is work on this area down here at the bottom. All right, so I added in the pillars with the redstone lamps. I went ahead and added in some acacia trapdoors as well as some lightning rods and candles to complement the orange in the redstone lamps and create, I think, a little bit more of a kind of a little bit better composition in terms of the color. I came through the whole portal room and I added a few kind of random clusters of candles as well as a few patches of glow lichen. So you can see they're just kind of sporadic and consistent. And I also added some candles around the entire portal. Just a few little clusters. Nothing, you know, with too much design, just kind of a little bit of randomness because, you know, I guess these candles have been sitting here burning for a really, really long time and they're just kind of all over the place without really much rhyme or reason. I also did a little bit of retexturing of the polished deep slate so that the areas that have been walked over more and have a little bit more foot traffic are more kind of defined and have less of the polished appearance. All right, so I'm happy calling this project complete. I think there's definitely some things that you could add on and customize and change to your liking. So I want to show you what this looks like with shaders. So I have the BSL shaders on right now, which I don't know why, but for some reason it looks super foggy until I go like over here. I think this looks pretty outstanding. So I still have night vision on, which is why the water looks so black, which I think looks really cool. Go ahead and clear off those effects. Then it gets really dark and you can really see the glow lichen and the candles just standing out and glowing. Yeah, this looks pretty phenomenal. I think this is really what I had in my head when I set out to create a more immersive and larger scale portal room. This definitely feels like the right thing. If you enjoyed this video, which I hope you did, make sure to like and subscribe. If this video gets 20 likes, I will release the world boundless of all this stuff here, which should be pretty cool. You can check it out on your own and maybe change it, expand it, maybe even build a version of it yourself. As always, there's more to come, so subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, leave a like if you enjoyed, and I hope you have a great week.